Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progress in Action and Real Progressives. You know, Tulsi Gabbard dropped out of the presidential race today and endorsed neoliberal Joe Biden. This would seem like a shock to most of us, but we know the power of the DNC, and we've seen the DNC do this to Bernie Sanders last time. Should Bernie drop out, I would suspect Bernie Sanders will probably follow through on his pledge to support the nominee as well. I think it's important to note that no matter what any of these candidates do, this is a movement about educating each other, about changing the political dynamic, more so about changing our lives and changing the way society is structured. Politics is but a small part of this, and it's important, I believe, that regardless of who is standing for which candidate, you have the Tulsi stands, and you have the Bernie stands, you have the stands here, stands there. Ultimately, it's got to be not me, us. You have got to understand that no matter what any of these individuals do, that it is up to us. My life does not reside with one person. My future does not reside with one person, nor does yours. And it's important that we see people for what they are, accept the work that they've done, and accept that they've made different choices based on different circumstances. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, going back to 2015 and 2016 during the DNC last time, when we saw Bernie Sanders in the audience crying, sobbing, and we saw Jane holding him, and we saw everyone turn their back on him. Not everyone, a lot of people did, sadly. Bernie Sanders made a decision. You may not agree with it. You certainly have every right in the world to disagree with it. But what he did was he decided that he was going to create a movement. And he had a choice. He could either work with a third party that has no structure, has no ballot access, doesn't have the power to actually take it where it needs to go, hasn't done the hard work it needs to do to take care of a presidential candidate like a Bernie Sanders to lift it to the top. Or he could try and take over in a revolutionary way inside the very, very non-revolutionary Democratic Party. He made the decision that his best play was to try to take Democrats who claim to want these progressive things and to convert and to take over and to reignite people that had long since checked out of the political process to get them to, in fact, take over that party. Well, it didn't work in 2016, and we saw what happened. Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. Here we are in 2020, and you would think the DNC would have learned its lesson by now. But instead, what the DNC has done is choreographed a staged entry into the race and dropout into the race by everyone ranging from Pete Buttigieg, who by all measures was the closest thing to a competitor, Bernie Sanders, in the beginning. He had won the most delegates in Iowa with all kinds of fraud and everything else. He had also come very, very close up in New Hampshire. And yet somehow or another, he drops out of all people right before Super Tuesday. That's a strange one. Doesn't take much to figure it out. Pretty strange. Then you have all the other ones dropping out right before Super Tuesday. And line by line, one by one, miraculously, the guy who didn't even place in Iowa, the guy who barely even scratched the surface in New Hampshire, suddenly everyone has fallen behind and endorsed. It makes no sense at all. None. And then South Carolina happened. Massive voter fraud. Step by step, you can see the huge disparity in exit polling compared to entry. And quite frankly, we know that the DNC has done this with the elections. And we know that they have fought to some success in public court, where they have stated they are a corporation and they don't have any responsibility whatsoever to a fair election. They have no responsibility whatsoever to listen to the will of the people. They have no responsibility at all to you and I. And so today, Tulsi, after all the hubbub about how she stood by Bernie and how she was so good and how she would never back the establishment, before Bernie even drops out, if he drops out, Tulsi went ahead and took the chance of trying to get a cabinet position or something and went ahead and endorsed Joe Biden today. So, folks, that's a pretty painful thing to see if you're, quote unquote, a part of the movement and you're looking around at who do we have as leaders that can take us places. That's a pretty tough pill to swallow. But again, like I said, should Bernie decide to drop out at some point, Bernie Sanders will most likely follow through because he's a man of his word and do the same thing. So that leaves us. Where do we go? Where do we go as a movement? And it's very important, regardless of whether Bernie Sanders is still active or not, to understand that it is really, truly not me, us. He wasn't lying. When he told us last go round, hey, if I tell you who to vote for, don't listen to me. He meant it. He wasn't joking around. Many people try to put it on him, but he's just one guy. It's up to us. It literally is up to us. And I'm going to tell you right now, third-party politics, I spent 4 years dabbling around the edges, playing with these things, and I can tell you right now, third parties have the same kind of bullshit going on with them that the establishment does. Same old coots leading the charge, same old coots controlling different things, and different folks with egos blocking truth. I can tell you right now, of all the third parties out there, not a single one of them cares for economic truth, which is exactly why Bernie Sanders was absolutely eviscerated by the establishment. When he went to try and explain how to pay for it, couldn't do it because he was stumbling over whether he should tell folks the truth or whether he was going to play safe and talk about taxes, paying for this, that, and the other. When clearly the deficit between what he proposed as taxes and what he was going to spend was astronomically different. You got to have a different story than paying taxes to spend. Well, none of these third parties have a reasonably coherent answer. In fact, they know. I've talked to every single one of them myself personally. I've talked to the people that are in charge, the people that are leaders. And rather than worry about the substance of the message, they got caught up in the tone of my voice. And let me tell you, the tone of my voice is pissed off. Why is it pissed off? Because truth shouldn't be this damn hard for people that are not in power to grab hold of so that we can make a difference. But they've rejected it. And they have. And so that leaves us wandering in the wilderness without a real party that can actually do anything meaningful in terms of actually understanding the way the economy works. Without production, a UBI is nothing but a cash giveaway, and it is neoliberal to the core. Because all you're doing is fattening capital. You've done nothing substantive to change society whatsoever. Nothing. There's nothing transformative about it. In fact, the very nature of a universal or unconditional basic income means that somebody's got to be producing the product that you're universally purchasing. With this universal basic income and without a price anchor, without anti-gouging laws, without a whole host of other things. It's just garbage. And even Alan Greenspan, the worst of all the neoliberals, Alan Greenspan himself said, for example, with Social Security, fighting with Paul Ryan. He told Paul Ryan, when Paul Ryan was trying to privatize Social Security, Paul Ryan goes, wouldn't it be good if we privatize Social Security? Because if we privatize Social Security, it'll make it solvent. And Alan Greenspan goes, that's not really the way it works, dude. We can print, we can write, we can create as much money as we want. It's never an issue of money, ever. It's always an issue of whether we have the real resources to go with the money we're spending. If there's not real production backing it up, look at your shelves at your stores, folks. Look at the shelves at your stores. There isn't real production to meet real demand. So what are you going to do with your cash? Well, maybe you pay off some bills, whatever. The federal government has powers so much greater than what we're doing with this neoliberal nickel dime shit. The federal government could literally put a stop to those payments or make direct payments to credit card companies, to student loan, write it off right away. Boom, no problem. But we go small ball because we lack vision. We lack an understanding. And this is why it's so important to understand that a movement outside of the duopoly cannot happen without a modern monetary theory lens, without understanding the way it works. You will have nothing. And you'll just be leading the flock again to another neoliberal bullshit answer. And that is a damn shame. It doesn't have to be that way. This is stuff that you clearly see. They're trying to figure out how they're going to come up with all these thousands of dollars to be able to pay people a basic income, which is really a stimulus because it's not going to be a nonstop universal basic income. That's not what's going to happen. They're trying to prime the pump to make sure the economy doesn't completely collapse because bozos didn't institute a federal job guarantee that would have taken care of this immediately. Okay? But because they didn't, because people refused to learn. Refused. Because of that, because of the play to capital, now they're trying to find a way to keep the pump going by throwing money at the problem. But there's no production. There's no production. You got to hope in the short term that people can keep solvent, keep food coming in. But we could literally provide these things without problem. These stores could literally send the check to the federal government, and the federal government could pay it direct. This is not an issue of not giving people money. This is an issue of telling you, hey, when the prices go up because there's scarcity, you and I shouldn't be stuck with this finite pool of money, this $1,000, while the prices go up and we can't afford anything. It doesn't take a rocket scientist, but it does take a person of integrity and character to understand that a UBI is a false promise. So when we're sitting here talking about what a new party or what outside the duopoly or even within the duopoly, should Bernie Sanders pull off a miracle, what that looks like, it must be a federal job guarantee to counteract against the gig economy, to counteract inflationary pressures, to provide a superior automatic stabilizer. And if the things I'm saying sound fantastic and you don't get it or whatever, trust me, we can talk about this because this is where the rubber meets the road. We must learn these things. This isn't some idea. This isn't some opinion. Folks, I'm telling you right now, a federal job guarantee would allow us to serve our local communities from home even. We can make it anything we want, our communities, but by doing it as a federal job guarantee, those leeches within the gig economy, Silicon Valley pukes, can't leech off of your UBI and pay you a shit wage. That's right. They have actual countermeasures to prevent them from gouging labor and stealing from all of us. But you must think. You can't just go with the herd. It's got to make sense. And if people don't understand this, it's unfortunate that they're listening to voices that don't think it all the way through. It's very unfortunate because the allure of a UBI, is free cash. And we always think cash is king. But cash is only king if the product is there. Zimbabwe, let's go with that for a second. Folks have never heard this. Zimbabwe was a direct impact based on huge production losses to their crops. Mugabe had given the farms to the friggin' warriors and the other indigenous folks that didn't have the background in farming. Took it away from the colonizers, good for him, but the colonizers who had expertise in farming. Production dropped to huge numbers, and all this money couldn't buy enough food in the world. They could produce $1 million check, and it wouldn't buy food. Weimar Republic, we've talked about this before. We'll talk about it again. Weimar Republic. This is one of the most important ones of them all. The Treaty of Versailles was brutal to the Germans. And the French, as usual, demanded gold and French francs for their debt. And the German people couldn't cover it because their Reichsmarks were no good. And then in a staged shutdown, The labor of the industrial sector of Weimar stopped working. The production went to zero. You could have brought a bucket of money in there, and there was nothing to buy, and competition for any basic need was so through the roof that you'd had to come up with trillions of dollars that escalated. There was no getting out of it. And then they figured it out. And right here, right now, it's important to understand that while we may want to supplement shit wages with a basic income, instead, we can force companies to pay a proper wage and make that the right answer. And for those who can't or won't work, for those single moms out there and everything else, all the other things that keep coming back, we can expand Social Security without any issue. Let's not complicate this by creating more problems by reverting to neoliberal answers that libertarians have long begged for. Helicopter money. I have one screenshot. I wish I had it available to me right now to show you, where somebody said, thank God we're going to finally get a UBI and destroy the social safety nets forever and finally get rid of this friggin' welfare shit and all the programs to support food and all this crap. That's the thinking behind the actual basic income, folks. I'm telling you right now, it's unfortunate because many of you out there say, no, that's not what I'm thinking, but that's what the architects are thinking, and history shows that's exactly the truth. That is the pure poison pill of neoliberalism. And so as we're looking and we watch our heroes go and revert back to supporting Joe Biden, and we watch others trying to suck people out into these third parties, and those third parties are absolutely recalcitrant and unwilling to listen to how economics really works. They're talking shop. They're like at a campfire talking about economics out of their depth, but talking about it nonetheless. And they won't listen. And we must make them listen because they are vital to our futures. If they won't listen, we are all doomed. We must get a movement outside of this party system so these little teeny pocket factions do not destroy what unity that we can have within the progressive community. It doesn't matter whether you're in the duopoly or out of the duopoly. We need people, real people, fighting for these very things and united together. So that when a Tulsi goes and endorses a Biden, instead of laughing at the people that tried to act like she was better than Bernie, instead of laughing at them, and rightfully so, instead of that, we can feel sorry for them because once again, another hero fell to the wayside. And now we can pull together, comfort them, and bring them into a larger movement fold. And that's what we need to do because, folks, the enemy is right there ready for us. Can you imagine Neera Tanden laughing at us? Just like Hillary did. Neera Tanden mocking us. Joyanne Reid mocking us. Every one of these shills mocking. Sarah Silverman, you come out there and endorse Bernie 1 minute. I'm waiting for any minute now to start talking about how ludicrous we are for not backing Biden. Okay? We've got a track record with Sarah Silverman. We know who she is. So ultimately, this isn't about an election. This is about a movement. And this is about people learning how the economic system works, learning to take proper control of our lives, and learning to be effective citizens, and learning how to understand how to weed between bullshit and reality. And unfortunately, as you watch this coronavirus spread, and you watch our lack of response as they fight over things, Joe Biden talking about how, well, under these circumstances, maybe we can afford something, has no idea how to afford these things, waiting to find a Wall Street solution to an epidemic, to a pandemic. Not going to happen. You're going to learn, whether it be accidentally or because you choose to, you're going to learn that modern monetary theory is a perfect description of exactly how the system works, and then we can use the lens so we can figure out how to make it work for us. For us. And that, my friends, is where a power outside the duopoly comes in so that we as a movement aren't struck by any one candidate falling in, falling out, one party going in, going out, the leadership of a party screwing us over and backing AMI or some other nonsense, or some other group going out there peddling crap about the Federal Reserve and all the other horse shit. We can sit there and we can literally talk about truth so that we can make a movement that will serve we the people. It's got to be outside of any of these parties, because if it's not, the parties will hijack them. The third parties will hijack them. The regular duopoly will hijack them. Every step along the way, they will be hijacked. And this is why it is so important to fight for truth and to learn and to understand. Because other than that, if you don't do that, you're going to be led down another false hope path. And that right there is dangerous. We don't have time. Folks, I know this sounds crazy, but last time I checked, a couple of years back, IPCC report said we had 12 years. Well, I think we're at 10 now. If Biden gets in there, we got another 8 years before we get a progressive that'll actually handle climate crisis. Trump wins, we got 4 years before we get another crack at it. Fact of the matter is, it doesn't really matter. We've got to be fighting for it now. We got to be fighting for it now. And that means no matter who they try and push on us, the story doesn't change. We don't start defending candidates. We fight for our purpose and our mission and these programs. We fight for our futures. We fight for our survival. And I hope that my tone doesn't offend you. Because if my tone offends you and the message that I'm speaking doesn't resonate with you, then we've got real problems. Hopefully somebody can say it in a way that your ears won't, get offended by. But you must hear what I'm saying. I speak the truth. Nothing I've said right here is in any way, shape, or form not true. We're here to educate, and we're here to bring people together. But we're here to bring them together in truth. Not sit there going with some populist message that sounds good but has zero truth to it. We must be in the truth movement, because without truth right here, right now, we're lost. Truth has got to be true north for us. Truth has got to be our night star. We've got to be able to see that and point to it and keep going in that direction. We cannot get spun up. We cannot be darting here and darting there. We cannot be panicking. We must find due north and true north and stay on point. We got to be the lighthouse, folks, in the midst of the most vicious seas and the most vicious storms. We've got to be the lighthouse that guides the ships to shore. We've got to be true north. We've got to be the beacon. And unfortunately, there are going to be people that don't think what I'm saying has any merit, and that's a damn shame. I'm willing to talk to anybody. I'm willing to debate them. I don't want to debate them. I'd like them just to do the homework themselves rather than come at me with a bunch of straw dog nonsense. But the fact is that here we are right now with the economy tanking and election fraud going through the roof and no clear path. If we don't know the truth and we don't fight for the truth and we don't find our spine in this tough moment, and our spine may come from joining together, we're doomed. This is really what the definition of not me, us is right here, right now. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives, which is a 501c3, and Real Progress in Action, which is a 501c4. I'm also the host of a podcast called Macro and Cheese. Macro and Cheese is a podcast that talks about the actual economics that provides for a progressive agenda. It cuts through the bullshit, and our next episode is coming out Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called COVID-19 with our guy, Fadl Kaboub. I hope you'll listen to it. Check it out at www.macro, cheese.com. I'm Steve Grumbine. Have a great day, everybody. I'm out.